The San Francisco 49ers are a roster in transition. How is it shaping up this year? Can they compete? We'll explore that today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much.
Happy Monday to you.
Happy Monday. Happy Monday.
Happy what? This is last big week before the quiet times come. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah. League-wide darkness retreat.
Oh, I like that. Will there be any vacations to Egypt or the rainforest, or is Aaron doing like a summit somewhere?
I'm sure. I'm absolutely sure of all of that.
Steelers teammates, right?
Yeah. Get to the North Pole, maybe,
That'd be fun. It'd be a good place for a darkness retreat. Is it the time of year where it stays dark at the North Pole?
No, I think it's the opposite. I think it's always light there, isn't it? They have like 20-something hours of daylight per day.
North Pole.
Oh, gosh. I mean, we couldn't even make it 2 minutes
day
off the rails.
All right, yeah, let's just move on.
Yep. All right. So we're talking about the San Francisco 49ers today. It's NFC West week. We're putting all these teams under the microscope like we have a bunch of teams to this point. Kyle and I have taken the time. We've assessed the 49ers roster. We put every single player into different buckets. Those buckets are roster cornerstone, quality starter, rookie, sufficient starter, replacement level, quality depth, non-roster caliber, incomplete evaluation, and practice squad developmental player. Every bucket has different weighted value to it. Every position is weighted differently. And by the end of this thing, we're going to be able to really rank and talk about all the different rosters in the league. And so the focus of our conversation today, the San Francisco 49ers, we'll get into the back seven on defense, the trenches, but we start with the skill players on offense.
Yeah, this is a group that's probably really hoping to see Christian McCaffrey back to full strength.
Yeah,
I think, you can say what you will about the scheme and some of the other backs that they've had success finding. McCaffrey unquestionably was a difference maker when he first got there as far as how 49ers played football games. And now with Deebo Samuel gone, a transition there, Brandon Aiyuk coming off of a big injury, it'd be a really big break for them, I think, to get Christian McCaffrey looking remotely close to what Christian McCaffrey is capable of looking like, to kind of help soft the rest of these transitions that they have with their skill group.
Man, that's kind of the challenging thing. I like this group, but it's Aiyuk off injury. It's McCaffrey off injury, right? And those are those are arguably the two guys that are going to get the ball the most in this offense. Well, yeah, George Kittle's an absolute baller. I think he might be the best tight end in the league.
Can we start a petition for George to get the most target? Like,
no.
Remember when George had that big season and you were like, wow, what a monster. And then they were like, you're never going to get the ball that many times again.
Right. Like, it's a really interesting dynamic. I really like Jawan Jennings and the role that he's been able to carve out. Like, talk about power slot. This is the premier power slot in the league right now.
He beats man coverage too.
And he wins. Mm-hmm. And he wins leverage battles, and he's unbelievable in contested situations, which is not surprising if you watched him in college, man. This guy, just an absolute dog. And then Ricky Pearsall, for the challenges of his rookie season, getting shot, coming back and like have that big game late. I think he'll be an answer for this team. So I like these weapons. I really do. They certainly don't have the depth that they did, but Aiyuk, Jennings, Pearsall, Kittle, McCaffrey. Come on, we can go to war with that.
Yeah, it's still, for all of the focus around Brock and Brock, okay, you're off the Mr. Irrelevant contract, and now you got a big boy contract, and now you need to be, quote unquote, the man. I don't really think that, like, the elements of what's around him, they'll be able to sustain this for another couple years. And, how much does Ricky Pearsall grow and develop as a player that I really liked? I think he has great potential. They have a couple of 4th-round picks and young guys, too, for depth at wide receiver that I think gives you some interesting upside for depth between Cowing and Jordan Watkins this year in the 4th round. But even just that, if you go 11 personnel and it's healthy Aiyuk, Pearsall, Juwan Jennings, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, you're going to be just fine. It's going to be one of the higher tiered skill groups that we have. So Kyle Juszczyk, worth acknowledging here. Depth at running back. They've had success identifying late round guys and add Jordan James from Oregon this year to go with Isaac Orendo from last year in the 4th round, who's part of that big running back run that happened. And it's not a surprise when you consider like how this scheme and the coaches off of this scheme have kind of their ideals in team building. There's been a focus and prioritization of the skill players. And yes, you've had some losses, and yes, you have some questions, but they've put marquee investments here, and it shows. And even this year, I mean, a couple of additions between the tight end 2 add with Luke Farrell, who got a handsome contract, and I don't think that's a super sexy player, but to be the tight end 2 when you want to go 12, and then drafting Jordan Watkins and Jordan James in the middle rounds, they've continued to make sure that they have ammunition here, and I think they're fairly well protected.
Yeah, I kind of overlooked DeMarcus Robinson, who I think from a scheme perspective kind of works with what he was able to do with the Rams, and now he's coming over here. He's a veteran north of 30, but kind of a high floor player that you know what you're getting. As you do have some developing young depth, you have guys that are stepping into bigger roles. Aiyuk off injury, his cupboard's pretty full, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
I think they've got a group here they should feel really good about. Now, McCaffrey cornerstone.
If we're not going to discriminate against injuries,
he never gets back.
Yeah, but
Kittle cornerstone.
Yep.
Did you have Aiyuk cornerstone?
Yeah.
Okay. I also had Aiyuk cornerstone, and then I had Jennings. I had as a. So we really get weird with the slots and the wide receiver 3s, right? Like he's technically wide receiver 2 based off of the skill play. I have him as a quality starter.
Same.
Okay, and I thought that might have been hot on my part because you'd say, okay, he's a slot, but then I remember the Tyler Boyd debate that we had for 3 years running doing this exercise, and he's the quality starter for a slot player, but in the grand scheme of wide receivers, it's different. I'm on the plus side with Juwan Jennings as well, so that's kind of the ceiling that exists for me.
Good-looking skill players.
Yes, sir.
That's what they like in Kyle Shanahan's world. Okay, we are going to focus our attention to the trenches, O-line, D-line. Interesting strategy on both sides. We'll break it down for you here next. Be sure to stick with us. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just another budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track your accounts, your investments, and spending all in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you can start building wealth. Folks, the insights are surprising. When I first started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and I save more, and it's super convenient. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan for those long-term goals. And it's easy to collaborate. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
Trench is getting a new look when you look at the full thing on both sides of the ball. The defensive line overhaul is absolutely hilarious in a good way. I really like what they did on that side of the ball, but let's start on the offensive side of the ball, where a lot of familiar names are back with Trent Williams and Jake Brendel and Colton McKivitz and last year's third-round draft choice in Dominick Puny, Ben Barch, Spencer Burford's still here. They signed Andre Dillard to be a depth player. Matt Hennessy here in the picture. Connor Colby, God's never created a more perfect wide zone offensive guard than Connor Colby out of Iowa, which they ran a ton of wide zone last year. Least surprising draft pick for me in the history of mankind was seeing the 49ers draft Connor Colby in the 7th round.
On brand, right? You kind of know these schemes and their types and these peg
it's
guys.
Like, oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense.
I think the exciting part of this offensive line is Dom Puny and how well he played as a rookie. Because that's where I see the ceiling with this group. I love Trent Williams. He's 38 years old. I think Colton McKivitz and Jake Brendel have proven that they can hold their head above water as sufficient level starters. The ceiling, it's kind of been my buzzword. Like, where's your ceiling for your offensive line? I think it's Puny. That's what gets me excited. Ben Barch, I think, is better as a reserve. We'll see. Maybe there's some legit competition there, but I'm excited about Puny, and we got a decent floor elsewhere. But we know that the 49ers, and we've heard their offensive line coach talk about this, where they want to meet a certain baseline, and
if you meet the baseline, that's it. Yeah. And it's really interesting because obviously I've lived this world too the last couple of years, right? And getting a little bit more familiar, and God bless Teron Armstead, who since retired offensive tackle with Miami, but he hops on all 22 film breakdown videos and he's talking about pass protection tools and, we're doing a double bump. Do you know what a double bump is?
You've been through this with me. I think we talked about it last year.
Right. So the double bump is, we're hot. So the guard's going to set the defensive lineman, and then he's going to release the defensive lineman in 5-man protection and pick up the blitzing backer. And we're going to choose to turn loose and not block the interior defensive lineman because it's a slower player, and the quarterback knows he's hot and he has to. That's the kind of ideological stuff that they have in their toolbox that allows them to just say, we want you to be smart and meet a certain baseline. Yeah. And then if you execute the run game scheme, the stuff the way that we coach it and it's supposed to be executed, the responsibility for explosive plays doesn't fall on you. It falls on the backs. The backs make you right because they cut off of your blocks. So you can get into whatever corner of is that good football ideology or not that you want, but that's what they're trying to achieve, and that's why they feel the way that they feel about offensive line play in this system. Yeah. So do I think they have baseline level players at all of these spots? I'd feel better if Colby or Burford beats out Ben Barch. Like you said, I have Barch as a quality depth player. I don't think he ideally would be a starter. But Puny's arrow up as a second-year player. McKivitz, if you don't have to do straight drop-back passing extensively, he'll be fine. Trent is obviously the needle mover of the whole group. Brendel's a smart player that has baseline-level athleticism. I think it is interesting to me, though, Joe. This is the only team that hasn't really made a pivot. Of all the coaches on this coaching tree, Kyle's the only one really still holding on. Think about what Green Bay did, signing Aaron Banks to a $19 million year contract. Yeah. Think about Sean McVay and all the money they spent on guards last year. The Dolphins this offseason did James Daniels on an $8 million per contract and took a 2 and a 3 to trade up for Jonas Ioannidis. This is the group that, credit where credit's due. You hit on Puny in the 3rd round, it looks like, and maybe that allows you to do that.
We'll see. The OG, right? The OG. Plug anyone in here, right? Yeah, you mentioned this defensive line. Boy, we got some new stuff going on here. So Nick Bosa, we know about him, right? He's awesome.
Yeah.
Things are really different around him. They use their top pick on Kyle Williams, high good upside fit. Player out of Georgia.
Good fit.
Then they go with 2 defensive tackles, Alfred Collins and CJ West. Alfred Collins, your kind of traditional one tech that can really run too. I like his lateral range. Not much pass rush, but he certainly owns his space as a run defender. And
Yes.
CJ West, what's a fire hydrant of a nose tackle, wins in a little bit of a different way. But I like that pair, especially when the rest of your group is athleticism and Kevin Givens, who's undersized, but penetration style player. Jordan Elliott, what would get you excited by him would be the athleticism. Kalia Davis, athleticism. So they got their tanks to go with their twitchy guys. Obviously, Bryce Huff now part of this mix. Yetur Gross-Matos, who's kind of a base end. There's a lot of unknowns here, but they've restocked the cupboard with 3 young defensive linemen in this draft that I really like. I don't know how good they'll be in year 1, but I think the long term with West, Collins, and Williams gives you something to be excited about.
I'm very excited to see how that all comes together. Kevin Givens had to play probably a little bit more than ideally, but I think that playing experience will lend well in the backdrop of adding Collins and West, like situational guys that, you can kind of mix and match your personnel inside. The Bryce Huff bet is a conditional 4, technically. It's a 5 that can upgrade to a 4 that the Niners are willing to send here. It's pretty savvy from Lynch. This is a team that kind of embraced the transition this past year. As a result, Joe, they are set to get absolutely loaded with compensatory picks, and they're a team that pretty routinely has been capitalizing on the compensatory picks process. They're projected to get 3 picks between the 4th and 5th round.
Wow.
In compensatory picks next year.
Yeah.
So you send a conditional 5-4, knowing full well we're projected to get 3 picks back in that range, playtime dependent. So don't consider it lock, stock, and barrel. To get Huff back with the coach who had him top 20 in pressures in 2023.
Yeah.
It's a good bet to place, I think, especially when it's a bold bet to place, but it's not a bad bet in my mind when you transpose that with what their compensatory pick forecast looks like.
Yeah, I think it's a great call out with Robert Saleh and the familiarity with Bryce Huff, but also, it kind of takes a little pressure off of Kyle Williams as a rookie to have to do everything because now you have a little bit more depth, and I think that's good. There's a long-term play here. I feel like outside of Nick Bosa, I didn't feel comfortable with anybody being labeled as a sufficient level starter. I think Elliott and Givens are more depth players. Gross-Matos, Huff, more depth players. Robert Beal, more depth players. So, there's a lot to be excited about, but I think there's a lot to be concerned about early on. Is these a lot of young players?
Let me ask you this: if it was 12 months ago, and you said, "Hey, 2024 never happened," and Saleh just left the Jets to come to San Francisco, and he brought Bryce Huff with him, like Coach D'Amato did when he took Willie Beeman in Any Given Sunday to the new expansion franchise at the end of Any Given Sunday when they left the Miami Sharks. Is Bryce Huff a sufficient level starter 12 months ago in your brain?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's and I agree with you. I wanted to put Bryce Huff down because I'm sympathetic to Fangio's scheme a little different. He had a wrist injury that had an IR stint, but then you're a healthy scratch for the Super Bowl. Felt like it would have been assuming too much to put him back in sufficient level starter. So I'm with you where they're going to be a high variance outcome team versus what our grades given when we grade this all up, because I'm going to have a lot of incomplete evaluations. And obviously you got 3 rookies on the defensive line. You're not going to get a lot of points there with our scoring process.
I guess my thing with Bryce Huff, I recognize he's a good pass rusher. He's never come close to being a 50% of snaps guy for any defense. Right. Yeah. And so it's okay. You're really good at the thing that's most important, but I don't see an overall complete enough profile for me to say, you know what, for sure.
there's a part of me that's why I was really surprised the Niners gave up what they did. Because Josh Uche profiles as a similar player, right?
Yeah.
You're never going to defend the run. You're
right.
Good pass rusher. He was playing for $3 million last year, got traded at the deadline for a 2026.
Yeah. Given away.
It's more than twice as much money even after Philly eats it, and you gave a conditional 5 for 4. So I thought that was, when those details first came through, I was kind of like, oh, wow, like San Fran really pouring on the gas here. But then when you stop and see, it's house money, but they have a surplus of assets there that makes it a little bit more likable when you put him in with Robert Saleh once again.
All right, we're going to focus our attention on the defensive back 7, where there's a cornerback puzzle to put together. We'll do that here next. Be sure to stick with us.
Shall we?
Yeah, let's do it. We should start with the linebackers. I feel like we always get to them. Yeah, Fred Warner's real good,
Well, this is a good reason to not skip linebackers.
Right. Obvious
the best linebacker in football.
He is, yeah. Franchise cornerstone. Is he signing his this is his 3rd contract with the team?
He had rookie and then extension. That was a reset at the time, and then Roquan Smith came over the top of him, and then he took it back from Roquan Smith.
He's he's going to turn 29 in November. Played last year with he had a broken leg or something he was playing with, and just absolute gutting it out. All pro first team for the last 5 years, including the last 3. And this is a premier linebacker in the league, man. And I'm curious to see how it sorts out next to him. I think Nick Martin, their draft pick out of Oklahoma State, he profiles really well with a couple of backers that Saleh had success with the Jets, in Quincy Williams and Jamian Sherwood, like that rangy space player that can be a matchup type guy. And of course, D Winters, he got some run last year and played pretty well. So I think between those guys, Winters and Martin, I think they'll have an answer next to Fred Warner. And they've certainly added some depth pieces, guys that could play special teams this offseason. But I think this room is about Fred Warner, and then between D Winters and Nick Martin, who's going to be the running mate.
So everybody put your pitchforks away for a minute.
Or get them out.
I'm not saying it's going to happen. Or get them out. I don't care. I don't read the comments anyway. If you told me that Nick Martin eventually played a very similar brand to Dre Greenlaw, I think I'd believe you. So that was for me when they picked Nick Martin, and I sat there and thought about Nick going to San Fran relative to Greenlaw coming out of, Arkansas as a 5th round pick when he came to San Fran. That's what really got me excited about the fit, where Nick, short term, very explosive athlete, I think a big town teams guy, but the opportunity that exists to play in this defense and be the running mate with Warner, where the athleticism and some of the dynamic ability can really shine. And he is a violent football player. I'm really hopeful for the long-term outlook of that pick to fit and develop into a similar style hit to what the 49ers got in Dre Greenlaw.
I can see it.
Right?
Yeah.
See it.
I was going to transition to corner. Anything else on linebacker?
Let's go to corner.
So I talked to Brian Peacock, the host of Locked On 49ers, because I wanted to know, what are we thinking here with the Upton Stout pick, who's really only going to play in the slot after paying Diamador Lenore. And when Brian and I spoke a couple weeks ago, he said they probably going to play Lenore outside, open up the space for Stout in the nick. And so your outside corners would be Green and Lenore with Stout in the slot, which I think Lenore is a heck of a slot player, so I kind of want to keep him there, but it feels like maybe that's the vision. And when you look at the rest of the personnel, there's not a clear option that you look at and say, okay, we're going to keep Lenore in the slot, and then who's going to be the running mate with Renardo Green? I mean, this Trey Brown, Trey Avery, Chase Lucas, Darrell Luter, I'm not sure there's a comfortable starter.
Saran Neal slander didn't even get mentioned.
Sarandio's a good special team. Like at some point, he's been on too many different teams for him to play no defense for you to realize that maybe there's a reason for it.
He got like 50 defensive snaps last year, and it was very apparent why he didn't get a lot of defensive
and
snaps.
he had, opportunity was clearly there, right, to play him. Yeah. He's a good special teams player. He is what he is.
So this is a little bit less San Francisco-centric, but it is kind of a thought that's on my mind as the news coming out today that Green Bay's releasing Jair Alexander. Right. And I know what my own team's secondary situation looks like, and it's a little unsettled. I think it's kind of interesting that the concept of positionless players has been so romanticized. Where more often than not, it's not particularly successful. Right. But I look at a quarterback room with its composition like this, where you could tell me any of Green, Lenore, Stout, you can tell me any of those guys play inside. And I'd be like, yeah, okay, I get it. And Green Bay with Jair on the outs, and it was, I can't believe that their big free agent signing was Nate Hobbs, play inside, outside, right? Dolphins' number one corner once Ramsey leaves is going to be Kader Kohu, who cut his teeth as an inside player. It's just interesting to me to kind of look at some of these cornerback rooms and how it evolves, especially when you put the backdrop of a Jason Pinnock, who has some coverage ability in the safety room. And they drafted Marquez Siegel from Kansas State, who was a college corner at North Dakota State before he transferred and converted to playing kind of a more hybrid role. Just interested to see how it plays out with some of these rooms that have ambiguity and blur the lines instead of, we got a guy who profiles as a 6'3" outside corner. And then we got the 5'10" scrappy 195-pound guy who's going to play in the nickel. Yeah. And then we got our box safety who's 6'2", 215 pounds, who we hope someday can look anything like Cam Chancellor used to look like. And then we got our free high safety who can run a 4-3 and play in the high post and attack balls outside the numbers on either side of the field on go balls, 40 yards. It's like, it's all blurry now. And I think it puts more pressure on the coaches to get the guys in the right spots and play the right matchups on each week. But that was one of the thoughts that came to mind when I looked at San Francisco secondaries. I see a lot of different ways that they could go about putting combinations out there.
You've opened my mind a lot with what you said. I mean, even Keyshawn Nixon and Deron Bland, Mikey Sanderstill. There's a lot more.
Sanderstill's another great example of he profiles it. Oh, he's going to play outside. Oh, they're going to take Noah Monogany and play him inside instead.
Yeah. Well, condensed formations, heavier personnel. I mean, maybe it's not as like your slot better be able to trigger, and they're going to run duo. You run duo, your slot's got to tackle, right?
Yep. He's got to insert.
Maybe that's probably a lot of it, right? But so maybe that's the plan here. We'll see. Something's got to come together here at corner. I think that's fair. I like their young safeties. Malik Mustafa, Jair Brown.
Mustafa's a horse, man.
I hope he can stay healthy, man. That guy's going to kill people. Hopefully doesn't kill himself along the way, right?
It's a brick wall.
Good depth. I mean, Richie Grant's experienced player, Jason Pinnock, you mentioned George Odoms. I mean, they have good depth here, and you mentioned Marcus Siegel. They're pretty loaded at safety, which also leads me to believe that maybe they want to play some of these guys in lower alignments as well.
Nick, man.
Yeah.
Play some Big Nick.
I think you need to be able to do that, especially in this division.
Yeah. So, highest graded player you have in the secondary,
Lenore
is I have a sufficient level starter is what I have.
I am as a quality starter.
Okay. Yeah. He got a nice payday last year. They very clearly think pretty highly of him.
Yeah.
Warner cornerstone, Nick Bosa cornerstone.
Yep.
All things considered, and I don't think their depth on the offensive line is particularly good, but we're complimentary of the depth in the skill group. They have Mac Jones as backup quarterback. Pretty complimentary to some of the depth in some of the spots on the defensive side of the ball. Expectations a little bit lower. Kind of think they overachieve expectations here because they got fair depth at a number of spots. They still have cornerstone players in Kittle, McCaffrey, Aiyuk, Fred Warner, Nick Bosa. I mean, that in and of itself is a pretty sturdy nucleus of cornerstone players.
This is not, this is a 6-11 team last year, but they're coming off of 3 10-win seasons, a couple of, NFC Championship game appearances. Yep. I think the range of outcomes is pretty broad, but I think for a team that's labeled in a transition year, I think this is still very much a team that I would not be surprised if they won this division. Like, this is the worst to first story is the 49ers this year.
And they did that last time, right?
Well, yeah. So that's the career of Kyle Shanahan's been so interesting. He's had 8 full seasons, 4 times 6 or less wins, and I think 4 times maybe like
it's either been good or bad.
3 NFC championships, 2 Super Bowls. It's like, and that part of that's been living and dying with the injuries that seem to never escape this football team. And when they're more healthy, they have more success, obviously. But
we should be fair. They were 6-10 in 2020 and finished last. And then they were 10-7 and finished 3rd in the West, but then played in the conference championship game.
It's the Wild West, man.
The Wild.
I feel like this is the most wide open division in the league.
What, the Wild West?
I've heard that before.
Let's do the brand.
Will Smith.
Wild West.
Let's see. I knew that one.
Man, if we didn't have copyright restrictions, it would be great to just roll out to the and like I would say, I feel like our demographic's a little older than like the general YouTube demographic. But if you're a younger person listening to this, you might not have any idea. Like, Will Smith just might be the guy who slapped Chris Rock at the Grammys or whatever. Or the Oscars.
That hurts. That hurts. That makes me feel weirdly old.
But, like, they didn't
Will Smith is one of the
superstars
Prince. Of my life. Oh, yeah, you're right. But he's movies, right? But I guess those movies are.
When's the last time Will Smith did a movie?
I don't know, man. It's been a minute since Hitch, right? Or 7 Pounds or Men in Black.
There were kids that were probably 8 years old listening to this that are of legal age that when Hitch came out. It's been a long time. Hitch. What year do you think Hitch came out?
I would guess
2010, which was 15 years ago, by the way.
Oh my God, 2010 was 15 years ago. I think Hitch came out in 2014.
2005.
Oh,
we're done.
That's
cooked.
it.
That's it. We're out of here.
Literally cooked. It's 20
years
old.
If you haven't watched Hitch, go watch Hitch. Not The Hitch, which
keep it right here. Keep it right here. Yeah.
Hitch. We'll talk to y'all tomorrow. We got who's the Cardinals tomorrow on the show. We hope to see you then. We're out of here.
2005.